Jamal smoothed down his free-form locks. He took a deep breath. Today was the day, his first day. A real-deal work-from-home systems network engineer. No more stuffy office, no more commute. Just him, his brand-new rig, and the whole digital world at his fingertips. He cracked his knuckles, a small smile playing on his lips. The login screen glowed, a friendly blue. He typed in his password, New Beginnings 2025, and hit enter. The welcome screen popped up, a corporate logo spinning lazily. This was it, the future. He leaned back in his chair, feeling the soft leather, ready to dive into the code and conquer the network. He was home, he was ready. But then something weird happened. The screen flickered. A low hum started, like a trapped bee buzzing inside the monitor. Jamal leaned closer, his brow furrowed in confusion. This wasn't a normal startup sound. The hum grew louder, vibrating through the desk, rattling his coffee mug. The friendly blue screen twisted into a chaotic swirl of colors, greens, purples, and electric yellows. Code cascaded down the screen, but it wasn't any language he recognized. It looked ancient and alien all at once. The fan on his computer whirred like a jet engine about to take off. He reached for the power button. He had to shut it down. It was too late. Before his fingers could even touch the button, the light from the screen exploded. It wasn't just light anymore. It felt solid. It wrapped around him like 1,000 glowing snakes. The humming sound became a roar that filled his ears and his whole head. He felt a powerful pull, a force yanking him from his comfortable chair, lifting him right into the air. His apartment, his desk, his whole world began to stretch and warp around the edges. He was being pulled forward, into the screen, into the heart of the digital storm. It felt like being sucked through the world's fastest, brightest straw. He squeezed his eyes shut. The feeling of being pulled was replaced by a sense of falling, not falling down but falling through. He saw flashes of things he couldn't understand, tangled webs of what looked like internet cables, but they were glowing with a life of their own. He saw data streams that looked like rivers of pure light, flowing past him in a blur. It was the internet, but it wasn't the internet he knew. This was something else, something older, something alive. He tumbled through this digital space, his locks flying around his head like a wild halo. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the pulling stopped. He felt solid ground beneath his feet, and the roaring noise was gone. Jamal opened his eyes slowly. The first thing he noticed was the sun. It was bright. Way brighter than the sun through his apartment window. The air smelled different too. Not like city air, but like dust, olives, and something old. He looked down at himself. He was still wearing his favorite hoodie and jeans, but he wasn't in his apartment anymore. He was standing on a dusty road. All around him were white stone buildings with grand columns. People walked by, dressed in simple tunics and leather sandals. They stared at him, their eyes wide with curiosity and confusion. Where was he? This definitely wasn't his neighborhood. He felt for his phone in his pocket. He pulled it out. The screen was black, dead, no signal. Of course, there was no signal. He looked around again, his heart starting to beat a little faster. He saw a man carving a massive block of marble. He saw women carrying clay pots on their heads. This looked like a movie set, a very, very realistic movie set. But the heat of the sun felt real. The dust on his sneakers felt real. A thought, a crazy, impossible thought, started to form in his mind. He had traveled, not across the city, but across time. He had somehow been pulled through his computer and dropped into the past. Panic began to bubble up in his chest. How could this happen? A portal made of internet cables. It sounded like something from a comic book. He was a man of logic, of systems and networks. Things were supposed to make sense. This did not make sense. He needed to find a way back. He needed a signal. He needed a power source. But all he saw were donkeys, olive trees, and people who looked like they had never even heard of electricity. He was alone. A 21st century engineer stranded in a world without a single outlet. He felt a wave of despair wash over him. What was he going to do? Just as he was about to sit down and put his head in his hands, a man approached him. He was older, with a long grey beard and intelligent, questioning eyes. He was dressed in a simple white robe, but he carried himself with an air of importance. He looked at Jamal's strange clothes, his intricate hairstyle, and the dark, silent rectangle in his hand. The man didn't look scared, just intensely curious. He pointed at Jamal, then at himself, and spoke in a language that sounded melodic and strange. Jamal didn't understand a word, but he knew this was his first real contact. Maybe, just maybe, this man could help. The man with the beard spoke again, his voice calm and inquisitive. He used his hands, making gestures to ask who Jamal was and where he came from. Jamal, realizing the man couldn't understand him, tried to communicate back. He pointed to himself. "Jamal," he said slowly and clearly. Then he pointed up at the sky, trying to show he came from far away, from a different place. He held up his dead phone, tapping the screen. "Computer," he said. "Internet." The words meant nothing to the old man, who simply tilted his head, his brow wrinkled in thought. This was going to be harder than Jamal imagined. It was like trying to explain Wi-Fi to a rock. The man seemed to understand Jamal's frustration. He smiled a little and led him toward a nearby workshop. Inside there were scrolls, strange tools, and complex-looking models made of wood and bronze. There were diagrams drawn on clay tablets. Jamal looked around, his eyes widening. These were blueprints. These were schematics. The man picked up a small wooden model of a crane with ropes and pulleys. He demonstrated how it worked, lifting a small stone. He pointed to it and said a word. "Makan," he said. Jamal recognized the root word, machine. This man wasn't just some random person, he was an engineer. A spark of an idea hit Jamal. He took out a small piece of paper from his wallet, a receipt. He found a piece of charcoal on the floor. He started to draw. He drew a simple circuit diagram, a power source, a switch, and a light. The Greek engineer watched, fascinated. When Jamal finished, the man's eyes lit up with understanding. He pointed to the symbol for the power source and then pointed to a jar in the corner of his workshop. Jamal looked inside. It was a primitive battery made of clay, an iron rod, and a copper cylinder. A Baghdad battery. They had a language in common, after all, the language of science. Slowly, carefully, they began to communicate. Jamal would draw concepts from his world. Binary code represented by rocks. A network diagram showing how computers connect. The Greek engineer, whose name Jamal learned was Heron, would show him his own inventions. He showed Jamal a model of an automatic door opener that used heat and water pressure. He showed him a wind-powered organ. Heron was a genius, a brilliant mind who was creating wonders with the limited tools he had. Jamal was in awe of his ingenuity. Heron, in turn, was captivated by Jamal's drawings of a world powered by invisible forces and lightning-fast information. Heron and Jamal spent days in the workshop. Their friendship grew with every shared diagram and every successful gesture. Jamal learned so much from Heron. He learned how to think about problems in a completely different way. Heron didn't have processors or electricity. He had levers, water, steam, and gears. He had to build solutions with his hands, using the physical world. Jamal, who was used to solving problems in the abstract world of code, began to appreciate the elegance and brilliance of mechanical engineering. He saw how Heron could make steam do the work of a man, a concept that was revolutionary for his time. In return, Jamal opened up a new universe for Heron. He explained the basic idea of electricity, drawing atoms with electrons moving from one to another. He tried to explain the internet as a global library, a place where all the scrolls in the world could be read by anyone instantly. Heron struggled with the scale of it, the idea of invisible information traveling across the world in a blink. But he was not afraid of the idea. He was excited by it. He saw Jamal's world not as magic, but as the next step in the long journey of human invention. He saw the future, and it filled him with wonder. They started working on a plan. How could they get Jamal home? They couldn't build a computer, but maybe they could create a massive energy source. Jamal drew the schematics for a huge lightning rod, far more advanced than anything Heron had ever conceived. Heron used his knowledge of materials and construction to figure out how to build it on the highest hill outside the city. They worked together, combining ancient knowledge of building with future knowledge of energy. Their goal was to create a powerful enough electrical surge to hopefully call the portal that brought Jamal there in the first place. It was a long shot, a wild guess based on a million assumptions. Whether their plan would work or not, nobody knew. But as Jamal stood with his new friend, looking at the plans that blended two different millennia, he felt a sense of hope. He had been dropped into a strange and ancient world, but he hadn't been alone. He found a friend, a fellow builder, a fellow dreamer. He had learned that the human drive to create, to solve problems, and to reach for the impossible was a current that flowed through all of time. Maybe he would get home, maybe he wouldn't, but he knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that this incredible, unexpected journey had already changed him forever.